Um, okay, so thanks for joining the first meeting of the ROS2 tooling working group. My name's Thomas. You saw me from discourse. What we can do, maybe just to see who's on the line, is to do a round of presentation. Maybe we can start on Chime, and actually, what we can do is follow the Chime order. So, Aaron, do you want to?
Always
start?
first. The curse of the two A's. Some people might know me. I just joined here at Amazon as of Monday, and I'll be doing some nice fun stuff. So Aaron Blaisdell. So if you feel free to contact me whenever. And then how detailed do we want to get on these intros?
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Duncan, Software Development Manager here with AWS.
Prajakta, you're next on my screen at least.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Prajakta. I'm a software engineer on the AWS robotics team.
Emerson?
Hey guys, Emerson Knapp, also on the AWS team. You've probably seen me on GitHub.
Zach?
Hi, I'm Zach, also an Amazon software engineer.
Ruffin?
Hello, I'm Ruffin. I'm a robotics researcher at UCSD. You probably see me on GitHub as RuffSL.
Dirk and Jacob, we cannot see you, so we'll let you figure that out.
Hey, this is Dirk and Jacob from Ozra. Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Dragan? You're muted.
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Dragan from Canonical. I'm a robotics security engineer at Canonical, and prior to that I was the toolchain maintainer for Broadcom for their STB Linux for all the set-top boxes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna talk about stuff relevant to you maybe then. Jeremy?
Hi everyone, I'm Jeremy. I'm with Canonical. I'm part of the robotics team. I'm here mostly because I'm interested to know what this working group is about.
Carsten?
Hi, my name is Carsten. I'm working for Bosch.
Kyle?
Hey, Kyle Fazari, also here at Canonical. I work with Dragan and Jeremy. Always interested in ROS tooling, so yeah, look forward to seeing what this group can do.
Awesome. Anas, I think
I joined a bit late in the time. I'm Anas. I'm one of the team members with the AWS robotics team here in Senegal.
Awesome. So let me maybe share my screen so that we can work backward from the very preliminary agenda I had for today. Let's see. So I just wanted to present something we suggested to the TSC yesterday. Sorry for the ones who already saw that yesterday. But so the way we like the ROS2 tooling working group because obviously it's a very large subject and everyone has their own ideas about what's a tool and what's a priority. And I'm expecting the amount of requests we're gonna get will be far greater than what we can accommodate. So we're gonna work backward from the engineering bandwidth that we have, and we'd like the ROS2 tooling working group to basically own a couple or more in the long term software repositories end to end, and basically focus exclusively on that. It does not mean we are not going to have a mechanism to capture requests or anything, but I just want to start by telling everyone that the goal we want to set for this working group is to be basically regular sync of a development team. Anyone is free to attend, but it will be mainly geared around roadmap definition, planning, assigning tasks to people, and having the expectations that people who are going to take a role in this working group are going to be able to contribute on a regular basis. Let me maybe go through a couple slides just to tell you what you know, the charter or like the model we'd like to propose for this group. And by the way, feel free to just ask questions anytime if you have some. So yeah, so we want to have a clearly defined governance model for this working group so that we can make the ROS2 developer community grow more easily. I mean, obviously adoption is important, but we also need to onboard more developers to help with the number of tasks we need to work on. And the objective of the model here that we are going to define is to make sure we streamline the working group management, and for those new working groups to make sure that there is a blueprint for new working groups. It's also to ensure that, you know, like if you are a member or reviewer or an approver of this in this working group, you know what are the expectations for your role. Yeah, and also, so it was more for the TSC yesterday, but we'd like to try to define processes for this working group. And well, that's not necessarily gonna work for everyone. So this is a governance model for this particular working group that I'm going to describe now. And it's, you know, there will be, we expect local alterations or modifications in each working group of this like global blueprint, basically. So we like to work backward from how Kubernetes is running working groups. And just FYI on that slide, and sorry, maybe I'm gonna present, that's gonna be much better. There we go. Yeah, so Kubernetes is calling what we call working group SIGs. So don't be too how to say, like too surprised by that. So basically, if you see here, so those horizontal special interest working groups, special interest groups are like permanent until deprecated by the TSC. They have like project level concerns. They are more strategic and less tactical, and they have subject specific release documentation, testing architectures, and each working group own one or more projects. So in our case, like ROS2 repositories. And those projects are like are basically permanent until they dissolve. And yeah, it can be code, documents, or processes. So so Kubernetes has multiple SIGs, and each SIG has multiple subprojects. I'm gonna skip the rest of the diagram because it's not relevant today. But I'd advise you to read through this community repository if you're a part of a working group. I think it's an interesting model. And what we're gonna try out is to replace SIGs by working group and see how it works out basically for us. Yeah, and here are just to give you an example of what's a SIG for Kubernetes. Here are the current SIGs that they have. So things that could be interesting for us is architecture, CLI, docs, release, testing. All of that are done through SIGs. And there is a special one here that you can see on the right, which is PM for like a product/project management. And so it's interesting that actually they're defining the Kubernetes roadmap as a whole through working group meetings. So anyway, any questions so far? Okay, we're gonna get a bit more practical from now on. So basically, we will develop and maintain software we own, meaning that basically all the packages that this working group will care about or discuss about, at least during the meetings, will be owned by the working group. So there will be no single author, there will be no like single individual maintainer. The author and the maintainer of all the code is the working group. We're gonna obviously retain previous authors and, you know, maybe previous maintainers entries, but the goal is really to say, well, we are not having packages owned by individuals anymore. And all decisions are done in those meetings, like independently. And we expect those meetings to run bi-weekly or more frequently as needed. And in case we have decisions to be made around design, planning, and so on, so we are going to vote. And anyone participating in the working group will have some like voting power, basically. So yeah, and the meeting is there to triage issues, assign work items, as I mentioned before. So the roles of the working group are approvers, reviewers, and members. Approvers can merge code. Reviewers are there to like review PRs, and members are anyone who basically develop for that. A note there. So we are not trying to exclude any people from like contributing to those repositories. It's just that we want to ensure that we have a clear set of people who have right access and are actually maintaining repositories. You don't need to be part of the working group to contribute to package we would own, basically. And the last point is that software can be donated, and the working group can accept or refuse donations. So basically, you have a project that you are currently maintaining alone. You now have the possibility to, well, for now, email me until we have a better mechanism to just say, hey, I'd like the working group to decide if if you'd like to take over maintenance of that package or not. We're only gonna accept what we can realistically maintain. So the bar will be, well, depending on how many members we have to actually help with that. And once it's in, basically. So what it means is that you're trading off like control over your project against access to a pool of engineering bandwidth, basically. That's what it is about. So yeah, and we're gonna start small. So also we're not gonna take over like 10 projects overnight because we want to be mindful to not be disruptive of any ongoing efforts. Yeah, and here is the thing, right? So obviously things are gonna be a bit different at the beginning because we need to find a mechanism to bootstrap. But you can be a member, so it's basically an active contributor of the community. So you're gonna need to be sponsored by 2 reviewers and have a couple PRs to things we own. You can be a reviewer, and then you have access to you're supposed to do a PR review and be more deep down into the triaging and so on. So members also are expected to triage bugs, but that's but member is more is a lesser commitment than reviewer. And approver means that basically you have deep expertise on a particular project, and you will be able to merge contributions for this project. So all of those roles will have multiple people assigned, so that you don't have a very high loss factor. And there will be a few owners per project. That may or may not be a role we keep at the beginning. I just copied and pasted what Kubernetes is doing here. So it's basically someone who is more involved at the design level than at the implementation level, basically. So here is a goal. So we'll have a set of people who are gonna take those roles. Either you sit in those working group meetings and you don't have any role, it's absolutely fine. Or you can volunteer after this meeting, shoot me an email to take one of those roles. And the good point is that you're gonna get immediately onboarded because we're getting started. So we're gonna look for a few volunteers to help us, and the team here in Sunnyvale is gonna bootstrap the core of this working group, so that we start with a bit of engineering bandwidth. So yeah, basically where that things is gonna happen is in the GitHub/ROS-tooling organization. So this working group is maintaining this organization, nothing more, nothing less. So we also expect all the donated code or all the new projects to live there. As far as you're all concerned, right now we only have the cross-compile tools that we like improved on. So it was we took the initial ARM implementation and we built a small Python wrapper, which is basically going to let you like build cross-compile ROS to workspaces to ARM-HF, ARM64 basically. So that's something we're gonna continue like improve and contribute to, and we're gonna start onboarding more projects in the next weeks if we have some demands on that. Again, we're starting very small on purpose there. It's a new working group. We don't want to be directly in the critical path too much. Yeah, here is for the governance model. Questions, feedback, anything really? Well, that's gonna be a short meeting in this case.
Well, can we talk a little bit about how we're going to be maybe implementing some of the roles?
Yeah.
We haven't really, like, it's not like laid set out in stone, but.
No, I mean, really, like, so I think the implementation is going to be a bit ad hoc for the first weeks. Yeah. Right now, it's going to be, so practically speaking, it's going to be teams on GitHub. So I'm an admin of the org, so I'm just going to triage that manually. I think that anyone who wants to start working, helping us on this particular project, can shoot me an email, and at this point we are happy to take applications for any role and skipping any kind of red tape just because we are getting started.
I think we've got a lot of well-respected people on the call, so if anybody wants to join,
yeah.
I don't think there'll be any objections to that.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and yeah, I don't know, maybe what we can do is Zach or Anas, or maybe anyone on the call, I don't know, who has the most context. Maybe Anas, do you mind giving maybe just a quick project update, so about ROS2 cross-compile, what we implemented and what it's doing right now, just so that.
Sure. So before, a lot of this work had to be done manually for cross-compiling ROS2 packages. Basically, what we did is we based this off a design doc in ROS2 design, and essentially what happens is you specify the architecture you want to cross-compile against. All you have to do through the script, all you have to do is make the directory of where you're going to be cross-compiling. Copy some assets, some binaries, and then all you do is run the script, point it to your directory, and it cross-compiles against the architecture you specify. The reason we did this is, it's essentially better user experience. Makes it much more simpler to cross-compile assets, as opposed to going step by step and trying to customize like a Docker image and all of that jazz. So currently. There's like three or four steps. You make your cross-compilation workspace, you copy binaries, you copy your ROS2 packages, you make sure it follows a certain directory, and then you just run the cross-compile tool as you would run like a ROS2 node, passing in the architecture you want to cross-compile against and the directory. You can change the Docker image you use, and there's more information in the README. But this is, one of the first contributions we have to the ROS tool.
Cool. Yeah, and we're planning to use that as a like supporting tool for AWS RoboMaker. So yeah, we're definitely gonna keep that maintained so that everyone has a robust solution to cross-compile. We're gonna, I think we did Bloom release that yesterday, so that's gonna, I think, help people who want to work on Turtlebot-like platforms. Yeah.
So I guess one
So-
question.
So you need ROS2 installed on the host that you're going to cross-compile to another target?
Yes, it is possible to run the script without ROS2, but currently we have it set up such that you have to already have ROS2 installed. So obviously this is like one of the things that's on a roadmap and, things to improve upon. Hopefully, getting help from the community, helping us go about doing that. But yeah.
It doesn't require all ROS too, right? I guess right now we're saying they invoke it via the CLI, but even then, it should be installing its entry point, right? And all it really uses is like the amit-lint testing stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we have it set up, so that's basically it. ROS2 run just grabs the entry point, but then you could also run it as a standalone script.
Yeah. So that's something that can be cleaned up pretty easily, probably.
I have a question. The line there, then run the tool, ROS2 run cross compile, and it has -- arc and arc64. Now I'm a little bit confused. So where are you defining your tool chain? And also, are there any flags besides arc? For example, when you're cross-compiling, you could be doing hard float, soft float, and things like that. Sometimes there's very specific compilers switch that the architecture requires to work correctly and things like that. Are those switches passed down through to whatever ends up compiling, or how is that working?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you take a look, well, I guess since this isn't in the README, it's in like the epilogue of the script, but it's there. We specify all the different parameters you can pass. If I remember correctly, you can pass the distro, you can pass the architecture, the operating system, and then we also use Qualcomm's mixins feature to specify the CMake flags that are specific to the architecture you're compiling against. So yeah, there's a bunch of Qualcomm mixins that are specified for each architecture accordingly.
Does it honor? So a lot of the times when you're compiling and things like that, or cross compiling, the tool chain honors the tradition of external variables or environment variables. So does this overwrite them or pass them down to the final? Let's say if you need a particular switch for the assembler or whatnot.
Yeah. So that's something you can probably specify in the Docker image. So you can also pass it a base image to cross-compile against, and it can carry your own environment variables, and then that way you can use it in the variables you need.
And now the Docker image you said, what image of what? Is that your
the base image, the base Docker image. So you
so
can
like this could be like an ARC64 Docker image.
Yes.
I see. Okay. And is it a requirement for it to be a Docker image? But for example, a lot of these companies that release development boards, reference boards, like Broadcom or Qualcomm or whoever, what they'll do is they'll be added to build root or OpenWRT that ends up building its own libraries, its own tool chain, and things like that. So would you be able to say specify, a non-Docker configuration so you could, also, for example, I am porting something to an architecture that's not public or whatnot, and I have my build root, or I have my Yocto, or OpenWRT, and then I would like to compile ROS for it, for example. Is there a way to kind of plug into the existing build system?
So I think that was out of the scope of the design, and currently it's primarily Docker based. Maybe, I guess this could be like a future contribution of using these other types of packages like, Yocto and whatnot. But currently it's Docker based.
Yeah, and the reason why, so we were not, so first, I mean, it's an early version of that. We are definitely looking to make this tool better over time and more generic. But that being said, we are only interested into targeting, like platforms which are actually supported by ROS. So let's say tier 1, tier 2, and maybe tier 3, as defined in the REP 2000. So really most of the community is running like Raspberry Pi stuff at this point. And obviously there is a world, where you have custom boards and custom tool chains, which are outside of what OSRF actually supports as a listed platform in the REP. But we felt it was more important as a first step to enable people to cross-compile on the majority of the robots, and then go to the other platforms later. Yeah, especially we have a huge usability gap right now. If you have a ROS bot or a Turtle bot, and you have a ROS2 workspace, on your workstation, how do you actually, compile a binary, a C++ like package you have locally, and how can you deploy that on your robot and test it out? That's all the tooling there is. It's not obvious, and a lot of those roboticists are not compilation experts. So we need to add a layer of simplicity in front of it. Does not mean that we are not interested into adding advanced options down the road. We'll get there basically. That's the plan. But we're only Docker based as of now.
And the Docker, is there multiple Docker image versions? For example, hard float, soft float, ARC, the mini ARM instructions or things like that, or is this just the ARC64 Docker image?
So I think you're just using the Docker images that are already supported by Docker Hub, so the ARM32 v7 and ARM64 v8.
I see. So okay. Now I understand. So the porting, the cross-compiling is only supported on well-supported architectures. It's not really kind of meant to include new hardware enablement or things like that.
No, not really. I mean, and honestly, I don't know enough to give an answer to that. But as Open Embedded is on its way to become an official, tier 1 or tier 2, I forgot what the proposal is, in ROS2 in the future, I can definitely see a point where we could have some kind of integration with the Yocto build chain, as part of this effort to make improvement on that. But it's TBD at this point.
Yeah. Just on that note, I mean, I think this is something extensible. I think, as part of the tooling working group, being something community driven, I think we'll definitely see, community feedback in terms of extending this for the other tool chains you specify. So
Yeah, where the need is, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
I want to monitor those issues coming in.
Yeah.
have issues?
Right now we're at a clean slate. Yeah.
Not yet, not yet. We are flying under the radar, but not for long. And again, that stuff is gonna be recommended and used for anyone using RoboMaker. So we expect to act on feedback quickly.
Is this something we would ever fold back into our Culkin, like as a Culkin extension, or is this something that would always sit on top? Like,
so you can look at the design PR. There will be extensive discussions about it.
If you had a Turtlebot workspace, and some portion of the packages are meant to be deployed on the target, and some are supposed to be in the workstation, is the user always expected to make two separate workspaces, or would they just use the same like Culkin package selection flags to filter out which architecture to build which package?
Yep.
I guess the best answer to that is to refer to the ROS2 design doc on cross-compile, because there was a whole discussion on how this goes, and it goes back to the single.
I think
Qualcomm to be one thing.
I think the functional answer is, as of right now, you'd need two workspaces to get that workflow done.
Yeah. So, and I think the main concern we saw in the design was that, you should not implement full software into Qualcomm extensions. That's not how it's meant to be used. Now that we have this repo up and running, and we have a tool which is, usable for the use case we foresaw at least. Then we could, then adding a layer of wrapping around the tool to make that a Qualcomm extension could, it would be a fairly small endeavor at this point, and most of the code would still be there. So,
or you can just provide the workflow by, saying allowing the user to pass Qualcomm args. I think the more interesting part here is saying, I want to compile a subset of packages in my workspace and leaving it at that for now, right? Like that's the desired feature, and you can't do that right now.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. My question is, what can the community use to determine what's a good, tooling repository, or what can be considered something that goes under ROS tooling? Is there a definition? Specific or?
Yeah, so there is no, ROS2 tooling is really vague and broad, right? So I think we're gonna work backward from the engineering bandwidth, because there is no point for us to meet every 2 weeks, have a roadmap which is 10 times the size of people actually doing the work, and accumulating backlog items which are just going to get lost. So the answer to that is what tooling will mean. Well, tooling for me means anything which is not part of ROS2 core, so not RMW, not RCL, which is either enabling developer productivity or supporting robot function without, being a robotic algorithm. So no SLAM, motion planning, they have their own work group. They're good. It's already under control, right? So ROSBag 2 could be a candidate. RVs are cute. Someone on Discord suggested the CLI. I think it's maybe, why not? We could be open to that, because it's definitely something which is tremendously important for the community, and maybe needs more love. So we can discuss about that, but it's mainly who wants to operate in this mode where they would be confident that they would be okay, just decentralizing the decision process for their own work, basically.
Since you just mentioned ROS and RQT and ROS2 CLI, for either of those, I think the stated requirement to move those repositories to a new org unit is kind of like a huge barrier. So just that single thing alone would completely discourage me to move any of those tools. I think you can achieve exactly the same thing just without that requirement. So I would reconsider making that not a hard requirement. Because you can establish the same workflow and multiple maintainers and everything under the existing repos, and you already have the advantage of the containing org unit to be like governed by OSREF or other people too. So if the maintainer of that whatever parts don't continue their work, it can always be redistributed, the author and ownership to someone else.
I'm very happy to take on myself to be an admin of the ROS2 organization and manually sync the teams between the ROS, the ROS tooling and the ROS2 org, as long as OSRF is comfortable with us having this level of permission. I don't have a strong opinion. For us, the only thing is the red line is not, where the code lives. It's really not important. It's more, we have a clear set of repositories we care about, and for those repositories, we have basically admin access through the working group. That's all. My understanding, Tully, was more like saying, hey, maybe we could go with this model because in this case, the blast radius of people having admin access on ROS tooling is less important than on ROS2, but I don't have a personal opinion on that.
But generally, in ROS1 that was very different. In ROS1, I think half of the world has ownership access of the ROS work unit, at least everybody who works at Willow for sure. But for us too, we are more than happy. For example, we moved the RMW implementation for Xylon DDS recently under the ROS2 org unit, not because we want to maintain it, but because the original authors and owners still are admins on their repo after it was moved. But it gives people confidence that it's something anybody can contribute, anybody can take over if they so desire not to continue, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's already possible. I think there are some technical limitations if you're not owner on the org unit and only admin on a repository, what you cannot set up integration-wise, but that's always something we can figure out.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. That's not, it's, again, whatever works really. And honestly, that's a discussion that you're very small on my screen and very far away, but William does not seem to be in the room. It's something to take maybe with William and with you all guys. If you feel that you'd like to move RVs or RQt in this model, and you want ROS2 to stay, RVs to stay in the ROS2 orgs, then I don't see a problem for that, honestly. And we can take that offline around all the nitty-gritty of the GitHub administration stuff.
Have we come up with a process for how we actually build this backlog? You mentioned this group is going to meet monthly and prioritize this backlog, and
yeah, I don't have a strong preferences around solution as long as the solution work. What we've been doing for our team internally, and we use something called ZenHub, which is an extension of GitHub projects. It's a bit like Waffle, if you want. It's in one of those tools, right? It's using the GitHub API as its backend, so you don't actually need to install anything to see that. And we have right now in ROS2 security something called AWS Roadmap, which is the bar that I just shown you. And yeah, you can, if you have ZenHub installed, you can go there, or you can just use their website if you don't want to install the extension. And what I would imagine is that we could enable ZenHub for this ROS2 tooling, or reuse what OSRF is doing. Is there is some doc around how to do that in a way which is consistent. Otherwise, we're gonna come up with our own doc. Again, everything is gonna be through GitHub, and I expect the tooling working group to have some kind of issue only. Well, either issue only, or maybe just let the tickets live in each project. I think it's a bit TBD, but it's, well, long story short, it's ZenHub plus issues in repositories is the plan right now.
I think that whatever works is totally fine. I think my only, it's kind of going back to your comment about letting the engineering capacity dictate what the ownership is, but I think it's really more let the issue, like where is the consolidated tooling of the issue backlog dictate what the engineering capacity should be working on. And so if we find out that, the tooling working group is creating issues, or the community is creating issues, and 90% of them are with, let's just say, RViz or, Colcon, whatever, whatever it is, then the group should try to focus the engineering effort and potentially the ownership model around that set of tools rather than wait for the issues to come for cross-compile or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is going to organically grow over the next months because we still need to have a roadmap for what we own before we have a roadmap for what we don't own yet. But I agree with you that it's important to get to something like that. And that's why maybe either using ROS2/ROS2, we had discussions, I forgot when, with totally around now that there is this triaging level of permission in GitHub, because basically ROS2/ROS2 was not an option for us until now because we didn't have write access. And getting write access to everyone or a lot of people randomly is, I can imagine why it's a bit, it's a bit dangerous. But maybe this triaging problem could make ROS2/ROS2 more usable for us. Otherwise, we're just gonna fork out our own repository full of issues so that we have full ownership of the roadmap and start prioritizing that here. I can definitely see the working group meeting becoming a backlog grooming meeting in the next weeks.
That makes sense. Maybe, I don't know, for anybody on the call, maybe you can shoot Thomas an email if you have suggestions, around processes you've seen to build that backlog and how you'd like to participate in that. And then in the next meeting, if we want to review whatever that process looks like and actually start the grooming, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Maybe one comment to ZenHub. I mean, I'm fine with whatever you'd like to use. When we had to decommission, or when Waffle was decommissioned for us, we looked at different alternatives. And one thing which we personally, or from our point of view, didn't like about ZenHub is some people didn't like to install the extension. That's certainly subjective. But the major concern was the ZenHub stores all the metadata, like the status of the tickets, in its own proprietary stuff. So if you at some point decide to leave ZenHub, that information is kind of gone. And the big advantage of Waffle was, which we liked, was it stored it in GitHub labels. So you could remove Waffle, but the status of every ticket was still captured in the public tickets. So that was just something which rubbed us not very nice on ZenHub. Interestingly, there is a new open project coming up now, which is called Waffle, and I have to be really careful pronouncing that because it's not with a W-A, but a W-U, so Waffle. And that one basically mimics what Waffle was doing before, so that one also uses the GitHub labels, just for context. I mean, I really don't mind about what's being used.
I see. Yeah, no, that's a good data point, and for sure that could be a problem if we want to move. I'm wondering if the GDPR is gonna help for that. Most likely they're gonna need to give us a way out. I don't know. Anyway, we can, yeah, good feedback. We're gonna take a look at that. Yeah. So let's see. Any other comments, questions, feedback in the room or on time?
Well, maybe just one question. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Maybe just one question for the next meetings. To be clear, if, for example, the next meeting it's mostly focused on cross-compile, right? It would be good to know that ahead of time because that might make a difference of joining or not joining. if that's the only topic, then people know ahead of time and can plan accordingly. Or if there are other projects being considered and other things, it would be good to have that just if it's a day before, that would be good to know. Then we can figure out if we join or who joins actually.
That's a good call.
Absolutely, yeah. That's why we need processes around working groups, so that everyone ends up doing that for everything. Every time. Yes, that's good feedback. Cool. Yeah. So yeah.
So I think some of the action items we want to get nominations for people who want to contribute to tooling. I want to get a process to get the backlog grooming going, and then through that process we'll figure out what actually the focus of the tooling working group is going to be over the next short term.
Yeah.
At
So
the
that's
least, or whatever short term means.
Yeah, it's nicely summed up, yes. So by next meeting, you can expect a board up, a bunch of processes somewhere around how we're gonna run that stuff, and an agenda ahead of time.
And a call for contributors or maintainers or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, more publicly.
Yep.
Anything else? Anything else anyone else wants to see as far as action items before the next meeting?
Yeah, did we miss anything?
Cool.
Great.
Awesome. Well, I guess that's it then.
Yeah, efficiency.
I like
Saved
that.
everybody 8 minutes. Very nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for your time, and I will schedule the next meeting after ROSCON. So the goal is to do that every 2 weeks, but for the first time, we're gonna do that. Next one will be in 3 weeks.
Just as a curiosity, who's going to ROSCON?
I am.
Yep.
Well, I'll be there too, and a couple of more people from Canonical, so looking forward to meeting you in person all.
Yeah,
Cool.
that'd be cool.
We could get a tooling working group happy hour going or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah, we could. Is there like a person
Streaming.
as well? We could probably do that. Like,
Yeah, we could probably do that. Yeah, it's a good idea. Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
there we go. Meet up.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Till next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.